Hello there, my name is Christopherson, and I am sharing this presentation as fulfillment for a requirement for a position I'm applying for with CORE. So I just kind of tell you what I do oftentimes first when I work with a group of teachers is they have a message on the board when they walk in, and oftentimes a little slip of paper at their seat that asks them to take a survey. And I call it a pulse check survey. It's just a QR code. It's simple to do. You can use the QR code here to scan and get an example of what I might ask teachers before embarking on this professional development journey together. I use this information immediately after they complete the survey, and I just get a quick pulse for their experience, their knowledge, their understanding, things they're doing in their classroom, and maybe what they see are the next steps for them in this professional learning opportunity. So it's a good way for me to really on the fly modify my approach or some of the content of the presentation. So that's what I would do first with teachers. So this presentation really would extend for a much longer time than we have here today, but we're going to talk about phonemic awareness. I'm going to go over a couple of slides and maybe show what I would present and actually present a couple of them. But this presentation, we basically going to ask ourselves these questions. What is phonemic awareness? Why is it important? And the best ways to really support students in the development of phonemic awareness in the primary grade literacy program. So normally the welcome slide is the first one, but I really want to focus on having educators when they come in to immediately take that survey, the pulse check. But at this point, I would just kind of go around and do some sort of icebreaker, maybe just really the introductions and get a feel for the community I'm working with, and for them to also kind of get a feel for me. We talk about a couple of norms and things that we agree to ensure that we have appropriate flow and respect each other's time. And this is kind of the purpose for our time together listed on this slide. So one of the things that we were asked to do is to share some strategies that we might use during professional development. This is something I've used quite a bit actually as kind of a get you started, maybe to support the relevance of the things that we're going to be talking about, and for them to have an opportunity to engage with some points of research and connect it to what they're doing in the classroom. So the notes that you see on the slide, this is not something I would show them. It would be revised for them, but this is really the instructions that I've typed out for the presenter to conduct a research tour. And basically what it is there's 5 stations in the room. Each one has a QR code. You scan the QR code, and it gives you a bit of research information on the topic, an engaging quote. It actually references the research that it's based on, and then it asks some reflective questions for teachers to just have 4 to 5 minutes to engage with a piece of research. And then there are 5 stations, so they're going to rotate through all 5 stations during this time. Then we'd get back together, have a small group sharing someone to summarize. There's also a strategy that I use during this time I call float and find. While they're having these conversations, I'm not standing up the front of the room waiting for them to be done. I'm actually engaging with them and floating the room for a few reasons, to maybe add some insight to some of the things they're talking about, but also to look for the insight of others that maybe I want to call to and ask them to share with the group. So I float the room and I find someone or something that I really want to highlight. So that's what I do with a research tour. So these are actually the 5 research stations that I have for this presentation. I only have one sample station put together for you because of time, but if you scan this QR code here to the right, it'll show you what the teachers have to engage in, and then you just see the topics for the remaining 4 research stations. But I think it's a good way to show them that, hey, we're talking about things that are research-based here. This aren't just some wild ideas we're bringing to you. We really are riding on the backs of the experts. And so it helps them do that. But also I think the reflective questions help them see that's what the research says. What does it look like in my classroom? And it really kind of plants the seed for possible change here as we roll through the program. So I just would want to throw out a definition of what phonemic awareness is. And a lot of the things that I would probably be talking about with teachers as we support phonemic awareness, which I've done a lot of this school year, a lot of them probably look at that and think, I've had a lot of training and support. I know what phonemic awareness is. I know what I need to do in the classroom. And And that's respectable, and I appreciate that information, but we really need to kind of take a step back for me to share my thoughts, for the participants to share their thoughts, so that we're all on the same page. And as we move forward in the work, we aren't saying the same things, but talking about two different things at the same time. I think it's important to also consider and share with them that phonemic awareness is really an auditory experience, that once we bring out the grapheme, we really kind of move into the phonics world. We're kind of trite with it, but I think it's kind of fun to share and gives them an idea. I've heard in the past that educators say that you can teach or support phonemic awareness in the dark, as it's very auditory and requires your ears. Now, that's a little trite because oftentimes it requires more than that, but it's just a good way to kind of establish a baseline of the difference between phonemic awareness and phonics. And of course, the anticipatory part is the connection to the phonics world. So I'm going to kind of take over here and present from this point for a couple of slides. So this is something I would actually do if I had teachers in my room. So teachers, I know that you're really experienced and understand phonemic awareness. We've talked about it here this morning. I've heard some of your experiences, some of your knowledge. I appreciate the things that you bring to the table. I think it's really important for us, though, to look at what the research says about the stages of development. There's actually kind of a process students move through, starting from about the age of 2.5 and moving through, hopefully, by the time students are in 2nd and 3rd grade. So I know many of us are aware of the concept of phonemic awareness, the idea that words are made of individual sounds, and that overall awareness is good too, but understanding this progression that students should move through developmentally, I think is also important because it has implications of what we're doing for our students in the classroom. So you see the stages here. There's 6 of them listed. We're going to talk about each of these in the next few slides, and then the afternoon portion of today, we are going to be talking about implications and ideas and strategies to drop in and support students at any of these phonemic awareness levels. I think it's important to point out, too, we can't be lost in the idea that isolation is for the little ones and substitution is for the bigger little ones. And while that may be true developmentally, that students are prepared for the cognitive load and the demand and responsibility they have to engage with these phonemic awareness activities, students need engagement at all levels with all stages of phonemic awareness. So while in pre-K we might be isolation heavy, maybe we start to move into blending as we get into transitional kindergarten or kindergarten, and we move from there. But students should have experience. We should be manipulating sounds and words for them throughout the day, that from all stages of this, understanding that they probably can't do it to independence, but even that familiarity will help sort of build that awareness and will really strengthen their preparation when they move to phonics. So let's talk about a couple of these stages here next. So I'm stepping out of presenter mode here and back to myself. I'm going to skip the phoneme isolation slide. I kind of feel like that's the slide that when educators kind of think of what phonemic awareness is, it's identifying sounds that students hear in words. And so I'm going to kind of step on to maybe something that they might be a little less familiar with in a future slide. Okay, so here we move on to phoneme blending. And I think it's important for us to make sure that we stress to our teachers that we are using what I call common instructional language. Because I've heard blending being called, let's squish together the sounds, let's push them together, and I think if that we standardize our, what I call instructional language, a student learning what blending is in kindergarten, when they get to 1st grade, they're going to know what that is too because they're using common language. So I'm not going to present this slide and move on to the next one. So I appreciate the focus that we've had on phoneme isolation, where we help support students understanding where they can hear each of the individual sounds that are produced in a word. Blending is going to be huge when they move on to reading, but the next one I'd like to talk about is phoneme segmentation. And so this one you've heard, sometimes we call it breaking apart, chop it apart, or different cutisms we use with their students, and that's okay. I would just encourage you as a team in the grade level, and then articulate vertically across the other grade levels to make sure you consider using similar vocabulary when you're instructing your students, what I call instructional vocabulary. So maybe consider using the word like segmentation as opposed to telling the students to break the words apart. But in essence, that's what we're doing. So this third stage in phonemic awareness is segmentation. So we're moving up a little on the cognitive demand and the responsibility that students have in their working memory. So we have to be mindful of that to make sure that what we're doing with them is developmentally appropriate and they're prepared and kind of ready for it. So there's a huge connection between segmentation and really blending and carry over into spelling and reading. We really want to rely heavily on what the science of reading is telling us now. And as students learn to, in the future, tackle words that are unknown to them, they really have to kind of do a little bit of segmentation, right, in phonics, and we don't call it that, but this is really the heart or the essence of where that comes from, that one-to-one connection from letter to sound as students are trying to tackle the words. And so something I've seen with this in classrooms that's been pretty powerful is teachers integrating the instruction, not only the things that they are saying, because we get so caught up in phonemic awareness being things that we say and the things that we hear, but making things, it's such an abstract idea for students. So we see teachers using, I hear it called brain-based teaching or total physical response, but doing some sort of motion with their hands and movement that the kids become very familiar with. The activity becomes almost second nature to them as we take them through the different opportunities to segment. So I would really encourage, the research is really strong on connecting the abstract world to something concrete, like moving up and down your arm, for example. I was in a classroom. It's interesting. I like to call myself a great cross-pollinator because I get to see lots of things and that work so well in lots of classrooms. And I'll share an example, just a simple one here with you that the students seem to really get into. So I'm not sure what these are called, but these are little toys that make lots of fun noise. This can work for both blending and also segmenting. So what I really like about this is because I know we use the terms I'm asking you not to, like stretching out words or chopping these up. The students literally do those things with this toy. So as they're segmenting, they can say each sound like at, and they pull them apart. And then they learn also to manipulate these to push them back together. And when they blend sounds, they go cat, and they push it together and say cat. So a small thing, but what I think this is so powerful is that it's doing exactly what we're asking the students to do with the sounds that they're hearing. We're asking them to stretch them out. We're asking them to push them together. We're asking them to blend them. We're asking them to segment them. So if we're trying to connect something to the abstract that is a concrete thing they can understand, this is a great little tool for that. So I'm going to just kind of record for a second on each of these slides so you have an idea of what the rest of the slides look like. I kind of carry through with this part of the presentation, but I didn't move it all into preparing for the instructional implications of the things that we learned. Here's the slide for phoneme deletion. One of the things I would just point out here with deletions, substitutions, additions, students really do benefit from using some sort of manipulation with your hands or your arms or your body or a tool or something, especially with the idea of they got to remove something. In substitution, they got to remove it, think of something else, and bring it back out and push it into there. So it gets much more complicated and the cognitive load increases for sure. And then I talked about phoneme substitution a second ago, but here's the slide that sort of aligns to that. And then this is just a little information. I just kind of thought through what I would do for the rest of the presentation. The final section of the presentation would be planning for classroom strategies and activities to support all degrees of phonemic awareness to meet the needs of all students in the classroom. And so that's kind of what we move to next. A lot of interactive, collaborative time. So at the end of a presentation, I often use a retrospective reflection, asking teachers that based on what we learned today and talked about, what are you going to start doing? What are you going to stop doing? What are you going to continue doing? I'm a huge proponent of commission-based professional development, where we learn something, now what are we going to do differently? And this is kind of a cool way to kind of wrap up the day, but also as a starter for a plan for the future of how we're going to do business differently. And I always, in my professional learning time with teachers, and leaders with this quote. And never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And that's what we're doing. We're here to change the world. Thank you for your time.